What is up, guys? Michael here today, bringing another episode of Chu On This, a show where I bring on fellow YouTubers and movie and entertainment lovers, and we talk about our favorite things in the world. And today I have an awesome guest on today. I have Chris Hartwell. What's up, Chris? How's it going?
What's going on, man? Thanks so much for having me. This is a lot of fun. I tend to do most of my reviews in the vacuum of this room that you see me in right now, all by myself. So actually getting to talk to someone and actually see someone, it's pretty awesome. So this is great.
A little different. So we're trying something different with your room today. So, man, we're just gonna jump right in. Where did your love for film start?
Definitely. It started back around when I was 7 or 8, probably. And I watched Star Wars. I'm sure you've heard this story or one similar to it a million times from different people. But it makes sense because the film was fantastic. And for me, it wasn't an instant, I want to make movies. For me, it was just, I wanted to make my own version of Star Wars. So I ended up spending years creating my own, fictional sci-fi fantasy, except it was basically just a ripoff of Star Wars. So if you can imagine, I had things like G-Walks instead of Ewoks, and I had things like, shooting Saturn instead of the Death Star. And yeah, it was just my own version of that. And then from there, as I got into storytelling and telling that story specifically, I decided that I wanted to, tell my own stories. And it kind of just blossomed from there as I, grew to understand what it meant to be a writer, what it meant to be a director. And that's kind of where it all started.
Awesome, man. I noticed that obviously your love for Star Wars. This year you got to go to Star Wars Celebration. How was it, first of all?
Oh man, it lived up to the legend for me and then some. It's one thing. I mean, even like I was just saying with this interaction right now, it's fun to be with people and talk about things that we love, i.e. film. And in this case, to be with thousands and thousands of fans, really, celebrating literally something that we all together loved. That being Star Wars was just fantastic. So I mean, obviously it was cool to be there and to see, to be the first person to see the trailer. But more than anything, it was just about connecting with the fans and sharing with them in that awesome experience. And also too, like seeing people that are just, I think, the MVPs of Lucasfilm right now, whether it be Dave Filoni or Rian Johnson, and just really getting a very palpable sense of their passion for something that I love so much and want to see furthered in awesome ways, and going, you know what, I feel like we're in safe hands with these guys. So yeah, so good. I'd go again in a heartbeat.
Definitely. I noticed that you actually posted a video with Mark Ellis. We've had a few of the Collider / Schmoes guys on. So how'd you run into them? How'd you come about with them?
Yeah, so I've been a big fan of their online content for a while, and actually because of Collider, I actually kind of started doing my own YouTube stuff about 2 years ago. About 2 years ago they had auditions for these TV recap posts, so they were going to be recapping things like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Blacklist, and at that point I had never done anything like that. So I decided, if I was going to submit for that, I should probably put myself on camera talking about film, if that's in fact what they were going to hire me to do. So I took an afternoon and I reviewed the Leftovers pilot, which was fantastic fun. And I shot that, uploaded that, and sent that off to them. And through that, I got to go on an interview. And I didn't get the gig with them, which was a bummer. But it was so much fun doing that that I'm like, I feel like I should just continue to do this myself, which is kind of how the Hart Beat was birthed. But since then, I just kind of stayed in contact with them since that interview. And actually, gosh, maybe 6 months ago, Christian was just tweeting out that he had gone to Disneyland, and he had Christian Harloff, that is, and he had so much fun doing that with his daughter. But the one kind of bummer about it was the fact that his daughter wasn't able to get into the Jedi show, and I in fact work at Disneyland. So I just fired back a tweet saying like, hey dude, like don't ever let that happen again. If you're at Disneyland and you want to get into some show or whatever, just shoot me a tweet and I'll help you out. So a couple months later, he did just that, and then kind of as a returning the favor, he's like, hey, if you ever want to come up and watch some of the Schmodown stuff, definitely let me know. And I'm like, oh, cool. So I kind of went up a couple times to watch the Schmodown happen live in person, which was fun. And since then, we've kind of just continued to talk, and I'm doing have done a couple segments for them on the Schmoes Know show, which was really fun. And yeah, that's kind of how developed and has continued.
Awesome. The Hart Beat, you mentioned it earlier. It's basically your movie reviews and your TV reviews and whatnot. Now, I find your style of reviewing extremely unique, extremely different than I've seen anyone do before, really. How'd you come about with it? It's very different. If you'd like to explain it a little bit to people that don't know.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I definitely didn't go out of my way to do something different than what I'd seen. I simply kind of just started in a place in analyzing television shows and film from kind of an artist's standpoint. So as a filmmaker and as a writer, I'm always when I'm watching any film, whether or not I'm reviewing it or not, I'm trying to be an active participant in it, in the sense that I'm wanting to assess, okay, what made that scene work? Okay, how do I think the director drew that awesome performance out of that actor, because that thing can apply to my own artistic endeavors. And so when I actually started to review film, I never went to, the Hollywood Reporter or Variety or Rolling Stones and studied how they, broke down their reviews. And I didn't, endlessly watch Jeremy Jahns or Chris Stockman and go, okay, how do they review things and what certain bullet points they hit? I was just like, okay, I just watched a film and what stuck out to me that worked. And I'm going to talk about why I thought it worked, and maybe analyze too why it didn't work. And again, I try and look at it more as a fellow artist looking at someone else's work and trying to kind of just parse through for my own benefit more than anything, and then hoping that people find my musings and my analysis interesting, because yeah, like you said, it's not the necessarily the way that everyone does things, but again, it's the way that interests me, so hopefully the people find it interesting too.
For sure, man. And it's a very unique style, very different style. Actually, I found you through your Free Fire review, and I did not personally love the film.
Okay.
You enjoyed it a fair amount, and then you opened my eyes to some stuff. You put some stuff in my mind, like, the set, man, like the continuity that they had to work with within that warehouse is insane, and that even crossed my mind until you said that. So open my eyes, and I appreciate it.
It's things just like that again, like an average film viewer, and it's no rip on an average film viewer, they just wouldn't think about it. Like, why would you? You're just engaging and watching it as purely a viewer would, which is fantastic. And I think what's fun then, and what I really like about other different things like Every Frame of Painting or The Nerd Writer is they tend to delve into something that I wouldn't necessarily think about, just like you were mentioning with the Free Fire review. So anytime that I can bring that to a review and make something interesting that someone wouldn't otherwise think about is a lot of fun.
Definitely. How long would you say those analyses take? Do they range from a particular 5 hours to 2 or 3 days after you see the film?
It just depends on the actual review itself. So if you've watched any of my television analysis, that usually takes a little bit longer, because in those I allow myself spoilers, which means I have to delve a little bit deeper. Whereas on film reviews, I really try and avoid spoilers, which means I can only go so deep, which means I can only take so much time to do it. And I have a plethora of other jobs. So this is not in any way, shape, or form bring some of the bacon, so to speak. And what I find actually works best for me is when I'm driving to and from for my other jobs, I actually just pop up my phone and I literally just speak the review to my phone, and then I go back and I edit it and I crop and paste and cut and copy and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, for me, the fastest way to get it done is just to kind of like just verbalize really quick what I'm thinking, what I've processed, and then from there kind of make the finished script that I can then present to the rest of the world.
Most definitely. Now, are there ever films that are much too simple to even analyze in depth like that, or how often does that happen?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, it's ironic that you brought up the Free Fire example, just because most of my film reviews range from 7 to 12 minutes. Just talking about anything from the acting to the directing to the set design. And there usually is a fair amount that I can discuss. And one of the fun things that I really like to do with a lot of films, because I want to avoid spoilers, is I like to compare and contrast that film to other films. So that in and of itself can take anywhere from an additional 2 to 3 minutes, just to say, okay, maybe you haven't seen this film yet, but it might remind you of this film that you have seen that has been out for a while that I can spoil. But something like Free Fire, it's such a simple film. It's almost all in real time. So, kind of like the film plays out over an hour and a half, and the entire duration of what happens on screen actually is probably an hour and a half as well. So in that case, there is only so much that you can analyze there. So yeah, you definitely come up against whatever the artist gives you. And in the same way, I feel like the amount that a review is viewed really depends on how popular the film is. So like a film like Free Fire, not many people, I think, even knew what it was, much less saw it. So the view count definitely shows that. So sometimes it's like, if I have X number of minutes or hours in a week to actually invest into a review, I try and actually, okay, how many people are actually going to watch this? Therefore, how much time should I actually invest in it? It's definitely a give and take when you do something for free like that.
Definitely. I feel the same way. I mean, I'm a much smaller channel than yours, obviously, but when I go to review movies, if it's a movie like Sleepless versus a movie like, let's just say Dunkirk, which isn't out yet, I'm sure that I would put a lot more effort into the Dunkirk review.
Sure.
films.
Yeah.
How's 2017 in film treating you? Any highlights? Any stinkers that you just don't want to talk about ever again?
Yeah, it's funny. And I honestly don't mind going to see stinkers just because sometimes those can be fun to review and to rip apart. But I
Agreed.
kind of ironically had to have missed a few of them just because of my busy schedule. So I didn't see The Circle this last week, but I heard that was pretty horrible. But one of the standouts for me, and I think it was a standout mainly because I like this filmmaker, have liked this filmmaker so much, and he has so consistently recently let me down until this film, and that would be Split from M. Night Shyamalan. I wanted to weep and never watch a Shyamalan film again after I watched The Last Airbender. It was just so atrocious. And The Happening was just abysmal. And After Earth, though a slight step in the right direction, was still just like, so watching Split, and just so thoroughly enjoying that film. And once again, finding a Shyamalan film that, like the best of his films, in my opinion, wasn't contingent upon the twist. You remove the twist from that film, or the reveal, or whatever you want to call it, and you still have a solid film. The same with The Sixth Sense, the same with Signs, and I would even argue The Village. I mean, I think that's a pretty divisive opinion, but yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised with what happened with that. I also really liked John Wick Chapter 2. I very much enjoyed the first one. And that was actually one of my more enjoyable reviews to do because if you've seen the film, the opening shot, this isn't a spoiler, it's the opening shot. The opening shot, you see projected onto this wall a Buster Keaton film playing out. The camera pans down and you pick up John Wick doing some crazy motorcycle stunts and all that good stuff. And it told me right off the bat the kind of film that this wanted to be, which was one that was really just designed from the ground up to wow the audience, to entertain them. It wasn't necessarily being made to make you think about deep philosophical or theological or emotional things. It was just there to wow you, like a Buster Keaton film. And Buster Keaton is one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. And so the way I kind of designed that review is essentially kind of describing what I thought Buster Keaton did so well with his films, and then kind of comparing and contrasting that to what they did with John Wick. So that was a lot of fun to dissect for sure. I liked Logan. I think I liked Logan less than a lot of people. I saw it opening weekend, but for some reason I felt like everyone and their mom had seen it before me. So when I went in, I was like, okay, like this is the Dark Knight 2.0 as far as quality went. You know, this was going to be the next big thing. And again, I enjoyed the film. I thought Hugh Jackman brought it. I definitely enjoyed it more than the first two Wolverine films, which isn't saying a whole lot. I love the fact that Fox and their superhero films are kind of able to be their own little entities in and of themselves versus being connected to a larger cinematic universe, just in the sense that allows it to have a bit more stakes, a bit more consequences. It allows it to be its own thing tonally and stylistically. Loved all of that. There were just certain elements of the film that I felt like, okay, I can see what you're doing here. I can see the kind of story you're trying to tell and the different films that you're trying to emulate and pull from. And it just isn't landing as perfectly as I think everyone else is seeming to believe that it is. But nonetheless, I'm sure I'll get lots of hated tweets from that. But yeah, it's still a great film. It just for me wasn't as life-changing as it seems to have been for other people.
Definitely. I mean, I thought Logan, it's easily in my top 3 films of the year. I loved Get Out as well.
Yes.
But Split, man. Split was a ride. I cannot wait to see what they do next with that franchise they're creating.
Yeah, for sure.
It's going to make some serious money. Yeah,
absolutely,
sure.
absolutely.
How'd you feel about The Visit? I didn't hear you mention it, so just curious.
Yeah, no, I watched that right before Split, because I wanted to be completely caught up with my Shyamalan filmography. And I think the two things that impressed me. One, yes, it was a found footage film, but it was great to see Shyamalan, who has such a distinctive visual kind of style, still kind of actually infusing that style into a found footage film. And I think part of that came from, and he was given license to be a little bit more kind of artistic with a found footage film, because the main character who was filming was, fancying himself a filmmaker and trying to be a bit more artistic with the framings and stuff like that. But I like the fact that it didn't always feel like a found footage film. I thought that was great. And then 2, I really appreciated the fact that he didn't go for some grand twist. The effectiveness of that film wasn't found in the fact that it had some crazy twist at the end. I was expecting, I won't even list what I was expecting just in case people haven't seen it and they might expect the same sort of thing. But there were certain things I'm like, oh, so-and-so is going to turn out to be a bad person, or, oh, this is going to happen. And it didn't. It just kind of played out straightforwards. And And even so within that, like any great Shyamalan film, the most important thing to him seemed to be the fact that these characters go on a journey and you see some growth happen and those relationships change. I think being someone who gets very emotionally invested in whatever film I watch. So if it's a drama and there's a part that makes you cry, I will bawl like a baby. If it's a comedy and it's a good comedy, I will laugh uproariously. And if it's a horror film, I will jump out of my skin anytime that anything terrifying happens. So there were numerous moments in that film that I wanted to just punch the screen because Shyamalan got me with these jump scares. I'm like, you! Oh, I despise you right now. But yeah, for me, it was a really great indication that Shyamalan was kind of returning to something simpler and was challenging himself to tell a leaner, simpler story to great effect. So yeah, it was good.
And as you were saying, both Split and The Visit, in my opinion, do that balance of drama, comedy, and horror extremely well. Extremely well. Better than any film I've seen in years, really.
Yeah, no,
like you said.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I definitely feel the exact same way, which actually reminds me of one of the things that I really appreciated about Get Out, to go back to that, was the fact that it really wanted to be a scary film for sure, but it also, being from Jordan Peele, had some comedic elements. You could see him wanting to include that, but it also included some, pretty on the nose social commentary. And I think one of the things that impressed me most about that film was how seamlessly it was able to weave them together, just because those things can be very different. And sometimes in trying to do three things, it might just be like, well, that all feels uneven and it stops being one thing when it becomes another thing. And I thought that film really was able to pretty seamlessly weave in and out of all of those styles and tones really well.
Extremely well. I mean, it's such a heavy topic to deal with in today's modern landscape that we're in, but it handled it with fluidity. It had a lot of laughs in it. Hilarious film, but also, like you said, very intense. The last couple of scenes in that movie had me looking through my fingers, edging my seat, just waiting for that shit to happen, man.
Yeah, no, totally. I feel you.
Yeah. So moving forward in 2017, anything you're really looking forward to, other than, of course, obviously Star Wars: The Last Jedi?
Oh gosh, I cannot wait. I cannot wait for that film. There's a couple of films that I'm really, really looking forward to. One of them I think a lot of people are looking forward to. Actually, well, two of them that I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to, those being Dunkirk and War of the Planet of the Apes. And part of that comes from the fact that I love both of the filmmakers. I think Chris Nolan has done just so much amazing stuff in cinema, and Matt Reeves too. I mean, I really, really enjoyed Rise of the Planet of the Apes, but I thought Dawn was even better from Matt Reeves. And it's pretty fantastic seeing what Matt Reeves was able to do with Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, having had to take that film over at the last second and kind of adapt the screenplay to a new, to his vision at the last minute. And it still came out that well. So knowing that he's had War for the Planet of the Apes in his possession, under his creative control from the outset, with a normal length of scripting time and pre-production time, makes me really excited that he'll do something special with that film. And then with Dunkirk, I mean, just listening to Nolan already describing kind of what he's wanting to do with time again. And I think that's one of the main things that you see kind of tying all of Nolan's films together, just the way that he loves to play with time, either the actual, the warping of it, whether it be in Interstellar or just our conception of it, like in Inception, where, a second can be drawn out into numerous minutes or hours in the dreamscape, or in something like Memento, where the entire thing is shown backwards. He's loving to play with time, and it sounds like he's going to be doing something similar to that with Dunkirk, and that's just exciting. But the one film that I'm really looking forward to, that I think less people are talking about, but should be talking about, is Edgar Wright's Baby Driver.
Oh my God, yes, sir, yes, sir.
I cannot wait. I cannot wait. I love Edgar Wright. I think he's got such a cinematic eye, and again, like Matt Reeves and Chris Nolan, such a distinctive style from his television show Spaced all the way through, Shaun of the Dead and the far too underrated Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and The World's End and Hot Fuzz. He's fantastic. And as much, and I love it when he teams up with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. It is exciting that he is doing something slightly different this time, with different actors and stuff like that. So, and then again, hearing him describe what he's doing with those different sequences and kind of how each action sequence is intended to be very different and kind of its own little entity in and of itself, and having the narrative device of the driver actually listening to music and then allowing that music to dictate the pulse and the rhythm and the tempo of that action sequence just sounds awesome. I'm like, can I see this film now, please? So yeah, cannot wait. Cannot wait.
Yeah. A buddy of mine actually got to see the film already. He just saw it last week, and he doesn't live out here, and I'm so surprised that we haven't gotten a screening of it, like in California, right? But he lives in Detroit, and he got a screening of it already, and he fell in love with the film. So that's good news to me.
That's good to hear. I love that.
It was the least Edgar Wright kind of film that Edgar Wright has made.
Oh, interesting. Oh, it'd be cool to see how his style is developing, for sure.
Yeah, still ambitious, quite ambitious. Just a side note, what's your favorite Nolan film?
Oh, that's tough. I think I vacillate. I do vacillate. Taking the Dark Knight trilogy out for a second, I think it's probably Inception. But if we threw the Dark Knight trilogy back in there, it'd probably be the Dark Knight. I know it's cliche. I actually, honestly, my love of the Dark Knight trilogy, I think is slightly different than most. Like most, I don't like the Dark Knight Rises as much, but I actually really, really love Batman Begins. I think more than a lot of people, and sometimes depends on the day, depends what I have for breakfast, probably. I actually can sometimes put Batman Begins above the Dark Knight, and I think the main reason that I feel that is the Dark Knight is a fantastically well written, scripted, acted, scripted and written are the same thing, I know. Scripted, acted, directed film. But what I love about Batman Begins is it actually, to me, felt like it was really more successfully riding the line of being a kind of comic book film plus a Chris Nolan film, where you have what I call the David Goyer element. David Goyer co-wrote the film with Chris Nolan, and there are just certain elements of that film, whether it be the simple taglines like, it's not who you are on the inside, but what you do that defines you. Elements like that are just so cliche superhero, but are just fun to see in a, kind of darker, grittier Chris Nolan film. So I love the fact that film was able to kind of weave those two things together so seamlessly. And I'm also just a sucker for origin stories. But at the same time, and you can't beat Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker. Definitely. And just the dynamic that he brought to that film, and the colors that he brought out of Batman, and the places that he pushed him to go. It's too good. So yeah,
for sure. I mean, for me, I'm on the other end of the spectrum from you. Batman Begins is probably on the lower tier for me, but however,
all right,
I would argue that, I, unlike most others, love The Dark Knight Rises very, very much.
All right. Stand tall, man. I'm always down with people liking the outliers. That's great.
I mean, watching Tom Hardy's performance in that film, although it's undermined completely by the ending of the film, very good performance, I would say. Right. He totally immersed himself in the role. I just wish he got a better send-off at the end there.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I think he did a fantastic job, and especially when you consider the fact that most of his face is covered like this, and the fact that you're still able to perceive his intensity and the drive and the desire. Yeah, I agree. Tom Hardy is fantastic.
I mean, I can't wait to see what he does in Dunkirk. It doesn't seem like he's the main character, but we'll see, right? Let's hope.
I mean, I feel like he might be maybe the face of the German side, because it seems like he's going to be one of the German pilots. So he might actually be like the main antagonist, so to speak, or at least representing that side of the conflict.
Definitely. On that front, we're talking about Batman and whatnot. How do you feel about like Justice League or Wonder Woman, which comes out next month? It's coming soon.
Yeah. So I'm really curious to see how this whole thing develops, because this is kind of where I'm at. I thought Man of Steel was fine. I thought Batman v Superman was more of a Zack Snyder film. So in the sense that I felt like Zack Snyder was trying to be Chris Nolan with the Man of Steel, and that annoyed me, and I didn't like that. And I appreciated the fact that on Batman v Superman, stylistically and tonally, I'm like, okay, here he is. Like, this is the guy that made Watchmen. I can see him stylistically happening in that film. I just think narratively that film is pretty weak, and is far more in love with just gorgeous visuals versus telling a good story. And then I rewatched Suicide Squad a second time, and I can firmly stand by, I just do not like that film. It's a mess. Oh my gosh. I feel bad for David Goyer, because I appreciate him as a filmmaker. I enjoyed Fury, and I even enjoyed End of Watch. But it just, that film, it felt so rushed in the scripting, and you could clearly see that at some point in that post-production process, the studio came in, took that film from the director, and gave it to a literal trailer house to recut the entire thing, and it just felt like a mess because of it. So this is I say all this as a preamble. I'm really excited for Wonder Woman. I think it's fantastic that we're finally getting a female-led superhero film. I have my qualms with Gal Gadot as the character, but I think the film looks great. I think Patty Jenkins is bringing her A game as a director, and I'm excited to see what happens. But here's the problem. Because I think even if this film is great, even if Wonder Woman is fantastic, it just knocks out of the park, critics love it, audiences love it, it makes a gajillion dollars, I feel like we're seeing DC already course correcting and trying to do something different. I think they've seen cuts. I think they've seen cuts of the Justice League and they're not liking what they're seeing, which is why we're getting a Nightwing film, which is why we're getting a Green Lantern Corps film, which is why we're getting Joss Whedon doing a Batgirl film. All of these things are not part of their original plan, so they already seem like they're course correcting, which makes me feel like, oh, like it sucks. It's almost as if it doesn't matter if Wonder Woman's successful because they're already deviating away from where they originally intended to bring that character. So I'm kind of bummed for her, because if that's the case, it's like, it's a no-win situation for her. So I just hope that it's good enough that, and wherever they course correct to, she can continue in that new place, and continue to give us a female-led superhero franchise, because I think that's so needed and so cool. But yeah, it will be really interesting to see how it all plays out. And I have this sneaking suspicion that and also we have the fact that we have Matt Reeves coming in, completely starting the Batman franchise, or the Batman series from the ground up again. But I have this sneaking suspicion that once Justice League comes out, they'll announce that Ben Affleck is stepping down from Batman. I think they know that already, but they're just waiting to tell us, because if they told us now, we wouldn't want to see the Justice League. It's like, well, why would we even invest in this if Batman is already going to be a completely different character? So I think, I don't know. It's just it's my wild out there guess, but I feel like we might end up seeing right around the time that Justice League comes out, them saying, that's out of the way, that's done with, and aren't you excited for this new Batman directed by the awesome Matt Reeves? You did all these Planet of the Apes films that you liked. You're getting a whole trilogy. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like that might end up happening, but we'll see.
I mean, if it did, I would not be very surprised, because you are right. DC is notorious right now for their course correctionness.
Yeah.
I mean, Suicide Squad, in my opinion, should have been a rated R film. I mean, you get David Ayer to do the movie, and it's not rated R. It's kind of like,
Yeah. Yeah. No. I felt like I felt like one of the main issues with that film was connected to a ratings issue, where it being a film about villains could have been a little more hard hitting and interesting if they didn't just try and make them into heroes.
Agreed.
And I think it already might have helped that, but even more than that, I felt like the villain that they put them up against, that being the Enchantress, was just the wrong villain for them to battle, because you really only have one metahuman in that group, that being what's his bucket, the guy who shoots fire.
Oh, Diablo,
yeah. He's the only one that has like real superhero powers, and all the rest have a bat and they shoot well and they throw boomerangs and they can climb up walls. It's like, why is this team fighting this bad guy? It didn't bring out in any cool way their powers or allow them to showcase that. Like, you just have a bunch of faceless peons running at them, and they get to shoot them and bat them down. But that's only interesting for so long. So I felt like that was one of the main issues with that film as well, which was just, again, a bummer to see, because it's the thing is like, I think there's this silly dichotomy. Is like, you could either be a Marvel fan or a DC fan. I'm a fan of movies personally, and I'm a fan of superheroes. I want them all to succeed, and so when they don't, I'm like, oh, guys, you can do better than this. So it is what it is, alas.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping with like what you're saying, with this new bunch of movies coming out for DC, that hopefully we just get one or two good ones out there, because Marvel is kicking their butt right now. But I too, not rooting for anyone in particular, just want to see some good movies, regardless of who makes them. So
completely.
On that too, man, you analyze movies to the T. So I want to know, I love to ask every single guest this question.
All right.
Favorite underrated movie and the most overrated movie you've seen.
Oh gosh, this is good. So I actually, for the schmoes right now, I'm doing a series called Film Negative, where essentially what I'm doing is reviewing underrated films, or films that I consider to be underrated. And so the first one that I did was Peter Jackson's King Kong. I really enjoy that film a lot. I intend to, at some point, do one on Speed Racer from the Wachowski brothers. I think that film is fantastically fun. It's so cartoony, it's over the top, so silly, but there is such a distinctive visual style, such a fun heart to it. But I think the one that I probably get the most flack for, but still very strongly stand by, are the Star Wars prequels. I really do enjoy a lot of what George Lucas is doing as a filmmaker with the Star Wars prequels. And yes, I understand the gripes and the groans with them, and I agree. You know, the acting a lot of the times is cringeworthy, and the dialogue does take me out. But seeing the larger story that's at play there, and seeing what George Lucas is doing, building that world out, and continue to expand our understanding of a galaxy far, far away, and I think this is no more evident than after watching The Force Awakens, really seeing him daring to not repeat himself, daring to tell a different story than what we saw in episodes 4, 5, and 6. So I think the Star Wars prequels get more flack than they deserve. Overrated films, oh, gosh, let's see here. I felt like last year's Jungle Book was way too overrated. For me, it was gorgeous to look at. I thought the photoreal jungles and the photoreal animals were cool to look at, but I thought so incongruent with the tone and actual narrative, which is really larger than life and over the top. I mean, you have this human boy being raised by wolves, talking to a panther, hanging out with a bear, all these things that are just fantastical and whimsical. And so then therefore to try and combine that with these completely photoreal animals and locations just made me think like, I don't believe this. I missed the caricatured animation. I missed the silly over the top songs from the 2D animation. Yeah, I think a lot of people do agree that that Interstellar isn't as great as some people say it is, but I thought that film was a bit of a letdown for me. I thought it was visually gorgeous. You know, Chris Nolan bringing his A game there for sure. But for a film that was 2.5, 240 maybe, I felt like the emotional through line on that film was so thinly drawn. That to invest in that father-daughter relationship that had only been just hinted at in the first few minutes and allow that to carry through the entire thing, you know, watching Matthew McConaughey time and again break down and cry over this daughter that we didn't really ourselves know all that well, didn't work as much for me. So yeah, that's some for me, I think.
I'm with you there on Interstellar. The emotional aspect of that film is really relegated to, or delegated, I should say, to one scene. That one scene where he's watching the webcam, and
and
he's I feel like we could have done a lot more with it.
Yeah,
I mean, it could have been better. It's just a scene of Matthew McConaughey reacting, which is now notorious in all the mediums. Every single movie trailer that comes out, we see Matthew McConaughey crying to it. So, I mean, that's a plus from that movie, I guess, right?
That's true. Yeah, it gave us that. Thank you, Chris Nolan. Thank you.
So, like you said earlier, you've dived a bit into filmmaking, man. What's that process like? Are you more of a director, or writer? What do you fancy yourself more like?
Yeah, no, I most of my life I've both written and directed my own projects. I've done a couple films where I've taken someone else's work and directed it. But I really do like seeing a film kind of through the creation all the way to the finished product, you know, so through the inception of the idea to the scripting of it to the shooting to the editing, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I really do fancy myself as someone who I don't ever, if I ever write a screenplay, for me that's just the beginning. Like I don't feel like I could ever write a screenplay and give it to someone and not, you know, film it myself or direct it myself, just because like, oh, this is just the blueprint, you know. For me, it's not a novel, it's not you know, it's not prose where it's the finished complete work. I gotta see that thing through. And in the same way, if I was to take on someone else's screenplay, most of the time I would have to be a little bit involved in some sort of rewriting, just because I really want to find my own personal way into that project and into that story, and be able to put myself into it and, you know, pull something out of it that feels true and real to me. So yeah, that's kind of how I've approached things in the past and kind of how I continue to approach it. So yeah.
Awesome, man. Anything in the works right now for in that realm? Yeah,
so I'm working on a couple different projects. I'm actually slowly chipping away at a feature-length project right now. And in a basic nutshell, imagine the film Magnolia, and in the film Magnolia, we have a bunch of different storylines happening, and they're all interconnected one way or the other. You know, the Tom Cruise character is the son of this character, and this person is the wife of that person, and you kind of see all these different storylines play out that are loosely connected in all these different ways. Well, the film that I'm making basically follows the Philip Seymour Hoffman nurse character. but he's the connecting rod to all these different storylines. So there's something called a home health nurse, and this person actually goes to people's houses and actually does nursing in their, in their residence for them. And so basically you'd be following a Philip Seymour Hoffman-esque nurse character as he interacts with all these very different, interesting people. And it has a very quiet, simple kind of tone to it. There's no large explosions. It's mainly just having this one man come in contact with these different people's narratives and allowing that to kind of affect his own narrative. It takes place over kind of like a 1-day period, and kind of just experience these very different storylines through the lens of this one nurse. So yeah.
Dude, that sounds like an Oscar waiting to happen. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
If you could dreamcast it, with your own story there, who would you dreamcast in the role?
Yeah, I think I would want to cast someone like Sean Astin in the main nurse role. There's something so nurse-like about that person in reality. He's got a great bedside manner. I've met him a couple times in real life, and he really is the characters that he plays on screen. I mean, he has the earnestness of Rudy, and he has the heart and the faithfulness of a character like Samwise Gamgee. And he also has a way of, in the best possible way, this isn't an insult, of being a bit of a blank slate onto which we, the audience, can kind of project our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own emotions. I think that'll be super important because in this film, the larger than life personalities, the ones that are really distinct and that you kind of are viewing, will be the patients that he's interacting with. And I really want the audience to be able to see in the nurse character kind of themselves, and be able to feel with him, gosh, how would I respond in this moment? Or what would I think of this person as I take it in? So yeah, he definitely would be my go-to. And he jokingly said, maybe like a year and a half ago when I met him, he's like, hey, if you ever write anything for me, you let me know, man. So, hey, who knows? Maybe I'll send him the script and he'll be like, this is great. Let's do it.
Yeah, man. I wish you the best of luck with that. You never know what can happen. And one day that movie comes out, I will see it and I will go watch it
there you
3
go.
times. Just help you out, buddy.
And you can say like, hey, I broke the story right here. Chris pitched his film right here on my channel.
Yeah, this was the moment I talked to Oscar-winning director Chris Hartwell. Right here.
Right.
So, man, as we close out here, let's talk about your podcast, man. Watch and Talk podcast.
Yeah.
When did that come about? And, when did the episodes go up? Weekly, monthly?
Yeah, totally. The Watch and Talk has been great. I do that with a guy named Dylan Shuck. You guys should definitely follow him. He's over on Twitter, very easy to find. And he is kind of a podcasting guru. I mean, this guy does so much podcasting. He's constantly podcasting. Presently he's doing one for The Leftovers, one for Better Call Saul, one for American Gods, one for Fargo, maybe even. Like, he's insane. Plus, he's doing the one called. Yeah, exactly. Plus, he's doing one called The Watch and Talk with Me, where we do a weekly review for a film. And that kind of came about just the fact that a couple of years ago, I was doing weekly reviews for The Leftovers Season 2, and he was doing a podcast for The Leftovers Season 2 as well, and we kind of just followed one another on Twitter, and he got to watching some of my content, and I got to listening to some of his, and he's like, hey, if ever you want to come on this new podcast that I'm starting, we'll be doing film reviews weekly, that would be great. And so I was like, sweet. So I ended up guesting a couple of times with him. And a couple of times started turning into weekly, and then it kind of became a thing where I was like, all right, I guess we'll kind of co-host this thing. So yeah, every week we do a film review, which as compared to the Hart Beat is much more, it's more similar to this. We talk back and forth in a much more non-scripted, unscripted kind of format, and just basically review the film, talk about, kind of have a non-spoilers discussion, and then kind of segue into, if you've seen the film, more of a spoiler-heavy discussion, and do what I do on the Hart Beat, except in a much more kind of extended form.
Awesome, man. What's the movie for this week? Do you know yet or no?
Yeah, it's Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Yeah, all the way.
Oh, obviously, duh, of course.
It's got to be.
What else could it be, right? Seriously.
Yeah. So, we're both looking forward to that. I very much enjoy James Gunn, and I really enjoyed the first Guardians of the Galaxy, so I can't wait to see what he dishes out for us this time.
Quick pit stop here. James Gunn, I think you wrote part of the Belko Experiment. Did you get to see that one this year or no?
I haven't yet seen the Belko Experiment. I'm really curious to see it because it looked like it was like from the exterior, it looked like it could be a really kind of like generic, like, oh, here's the premise where, they got to kill each other. But knowing that James Gunn was involved and knowing that we'd see his kind of very dark sense of humor involved, I was like, I want to check this out. I feel like it'll have something to offer that, you know, maybe some other screenwriter wouldn't have infused into that screenplay. So yeah, I definitely want to check it out. Have you seen it yet?
I have. I actually went to Los Angeles Film School to go see it, and director Greg McLean gave a Q&A afterward. I even have a signed poster of it, and it was a very good,
man. Awesome.
Very good film. I would definitely recommend it when it comes out on Blu-ray.
Good. For sure. No, thank you.
Last big question here: buy or sell? Are you familiar with this, Chris?
Oh yes, of course.
Okay, man. This might be a tough one. I dug a little deeper into your catalog of movies and whatnot. So, Star Wars versus Lord of the Rings, man.
Oh, you cut me deep. You cut me deep here. Gosh.
Sorry, man.
No, it's good.
First time meeting, and I just gotta cut you deep. I'm sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. Oh man. Gosh, that's tough. Okay, I'm gonna say. Okay, if I had to choose, I'd say Star Wars. Just because that universe is continuing to go, and the fact, like, I mean, if I had to choose between like one, you know, like if I had to choose between the existence of one of them, I would say Star Wars because it's continuing to grow. We're gonna get more Star Wars films, whereas I think Lord of the Rings is a finished thing. If I had to say quality, though, I think I actually might choose Lord of the Rings over Star Wars. I feel like the Hobbit film is not included. I guess if I had to include that, that would knock it down a bit. No, this is a tough question. But my favorite film of all time is The Fellowship of the Ring. It came out at like the perfect time in my life where I was 13. Yeah, 13. And just old enough to go and really get it and be able to sit through a 2-hour and 45-minute movie and just love every second. But also young enough where the thing still just, you know, made me gape and wonder at the beauty on screen, and it like terrified the crap out of me with things like the Black Riders and the orcs and, you know, moments where Bilbo's trying to grab the ring from Frodo. And it just, in a way that a film hadn't since Star Wars, which is why they're very congruent in my mind, just captured my imagination and took me to a place that I will never be able to go, but so desperately wanted to. So I know I kind of dodged your question. Okay, if I'll just right now, I'll say Lord of the Rings. I'll go with Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
All right. You sure? Are you sure?
For now. Again, if I have oatmeal tomorrow morning for breakfast, I might choose Star Wars.
For sure, definitely. The floor is open for you to come back anytime.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
As we close out here, man, any tips for people that want to do stuff like you and I do, movie reviews, or even get into filmmaking themselves?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a cliche thing. But it's cliche because it's more difficult than it sounds, and it's just do it. Honestly, it's tough. It really is tough to take the time to consistently, especially like what we're doing, like consistently, in your case, seek out interviews, or in my case, write reviews and upload those weekly. It takes time and it takes perseverance, and especially if you don't immediately see the results that you want to. Oh, I wanted to get this number of viewers, or I wanted to get this number of subscribers, or whatever it is. It can be difficult to not just start something and actually see it through and continue with it. But really, there's no better way to get good at something than just doing it. And it's one of those things too where I think people too often with stuff like film punditry, film reviewing, or filmmaking have this idealized idea of what it'll be and how fulfilling it will be and how easy it will be when you arrive at that place. It's never going to be easy. It's never going to be just a walk in the park. There's always going to be an element of work to it. And that's not bad. And I think if you can enjoy the work and you can enjoy the struggle on a smaller scale, when it's just two guys who've got, you know, between them, you know, less than 20,000 subscribers, just talking about film and enjoying that, if that's enjoyable, then if and when the day comes when you get a big break and you get a bunch more subscribers, or someone starts paying you to do this, then it'll really be worth it, because it won't be about the paycheck. It won't be about the subscribers, because that'll always be a black hole that you'll never have enough, you know? So do it. I say do it. Just get out and do it, and be satisfied with the small version. Be satisfied with the miniature version of whatever it is you want to get to, because at the end of the day, it's still going to be you, a camera, and an audience, whether it be an audience of one or an audience of millions. So yeah, it's kind of my takeaway there.
Very good advice for a very good man. Chris Hartwell, thank you for coming on, sir. Anything you want to plug before we sign off here, man?
Yeah, sure. If you guys have enjoyed listening to me babble on about anything and want to see more of that, you guys can definitely join me over on YouTube. Simply search Chris Hartwell, Hart spelled Hartwell, or the Hart Beat, again, Hart spelled Hart, and you'll pretty easily find my reviews for film and television on there. Like I think I mentioned, I'm presently reviewing the 3rd season of The Leftovers. If you guys haven't watched this show, I highly recommend it. Oh my gosh. It's very doable to catch up on. Just 10 episodes for the first 2 seasons, 20 episodes altogether there. And then the last season's only going to be 8 episodes. So it's a very doable binge if that's what you're into. Yeah, I also do the Watch and Talk. You can simply search that on Twitter and you'll find all of our podcasts over there. So.
Awesome, man. Thanks for coming on once again. As you guys know, I'm Michael. This is my channel, obviously. Of course, you know that. This is Chu On This. Every week or every couple of weeks, we try to bring guys on like Chris, just talk about fun shit like movies, man, and entertainment. We love it. We love talking to you guys. So like Chris said, follow him on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter, Michael Chu for real. And stay tuned, guys. We got more interviews coming on the way and more reviews, hopefully soon. Anyway, we're saying peace. Later.